More serious talk now. Here we go. We'll reroute. Get back on path. No pun intended.
I don't know if I want to give away the trade secret.
Okay.
What's coming next or not? Yeah. First, I'll give you a cheers, and then we can talk about what we're doing.
Let it rip.
Yeah.
Started.
Always good to get that before I forget about it. I think it's going to be interesting. I think you might find this interesting if more just hearing and hopefully jumping in and commenting as you want to. So
I probably will
interject whenever you want to.
This is probably something that I would end up watching on YouTube when I'm laying in bed. Probably, to educate myself.
I hope so. I think it's going to be interesting. But basically, we're going to talk about New York City and how it rose through history, and how kind of city planning and ideas throughout the time of its history made it what it is, and how it got to where it is, and some of the things you probably don't think about. But overall, you don't need to be an expert, so I'm not worried about it. I just want you to jump in whenever and be like, that doesn't make sense what you're saying.
I'm probably dangerous, but I agree. This is going to be interesting because, obviously as somebody who's been in New York City, it's pretty fascinating that a city of that scale is laid out in the manner in which it is.
Yeah.
And you've got so many different ways to get around, considering there's a billion people.
Well, I thought it was a great example to jump into as the the Big Apple, and also you just kind of think of, when you think of the United States, one of the top ones I'd have to imagine.
That's definitely what you think of.
First think of, and also it's really where you get this idea of like actual city planning and good visual examples. I wish I had like a PowerPoint. Need a monitor. I should have looked at Jamie.
Flip it in. Put it up on screen.
Dude, that's where Rogan beats us out.
Yeah.
He can afford to have the monitor.
We'll get there one day. Don't worry.
I need the monitor instead of the bookshelf. And that way I can be like, oh, look at this street map. You can clear.
If not, we'll edit.
Yeah, we're gonna edit a big green screen right here.
Right there, Dylan.
Yeah, should got like a giant green sheet. That would have been very interesting. So yeah, cities are obviously changing and evolving throughout time based on people's vision and what's kind of being grabbed. You're looking at how is the zoning, the funding, the political power, what are all these factors coming together to build this creation? As I think you can kind of speak to this, but when you think of New York City, I'd imagine most people don't vision it as this like overarching, like taking years to build. It just kind of appears in your mind.
Yeah.
You think about it as being there forever, like how it is.
Agreed.
You don't think about it coming from this small little port, town, to what it is. So it's unique. Every city's unique in that aspect of there's a lot of history underlying to get it to where it's at. So what we're kind of going to talk about now is jumping into the actual history of it and getting from the very start. So very first question, in real estate, what's the most common thing people say when you're looking for a property? What do you want?
Location.
Bingo. That is what I'm talking about. So New York, obvious, clear spot. You have a great harbor coming in, deep sea water port. You can get into it, very navigable. You have a lot of resources. As common, you have Native Americans there. They're using it. It's getting kind of showing off its traits there of you can go in, you have rivers that go deeper into it. And then when you have Henry Hudson, the guy.
Hudson River.
Boom!
Yep.
Talk to me.
He's looking for the Northern Passage or whatever it was. I think.
I can't.
Can neither confirm or deny.
I can't confirm or deny that.
Okay, we'll double check that. Jamie, pull it up again.
But 1609, Henry Hudson comes by. He's looking at it, and he sees it. And at this time, he's sailing for the Dutch, and that's very important.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Bingo.
I'm just kidding.
We're there. We're making
gonna stay serious.
Well, that's not. We can't stay completely serious. Otherwise, it's just not. It's not as entertaining. So those are the first people there, the Native Americans. Henry Hudson comes along, and now the Dutch see this and they're like, "Oh, wow! a lot of trees, a lot of resources we could
Great place
make,
you have
some
here.
cropland. We could really park our boats nicely in here. I think we're going to start establishing a little like commercial town, basically. Right at the end, they're talking about the lower side of New York right now, lower Manhattan, basically. So you get a protected harbor. You can kind of have this control point back then because you have water around it. You can very easily kind of keep opponents away as you're fighting with people. That's kind of happened in that time. So this gives the great foundation for the city to build from, as you have a main point of access. You have places where people can park. You have people. You have plenty of resources around you, and you can kind of really start building off of it. So now, kind of flipping it to you, do you think that New York started as like this destined powerful because of this geography, or do you think it took then people really making a lot of decisions to make it what happened?
Oof. I would like to give a definitive answer, but I really can't. I feel like it's a mixture of both. Because I mean, when you do think about New York and the shape of it and its location, I mean, those are all things that have just allowed it to become what it is. I mean, you can't. To my knowledge, and I'm not a geography expert. I mean, I think I know my geography pretty well, but I don't think there's one single solitary piece of land, on Earth where it's just straight and people are like, let's build this, kind of more or less as it is, where it's just square up and down through it. Maybe that's jumping a little, like kind of getting a little bit ahead, but I do think that
to the line.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think that the water. I mean, all of the biggest cities on the East Coast, and even some they're sprinkled throughout the United States, obviously. So it's like you got New York, obviously Charleston in South Carolina. We've got Baltimore, like all of those cities, Savannah, Florida's Florida. So let's just not.
Its own beast.
Let's just not go there. But Philadelphia, even if you move inland, Pittsburgh, like water was important, and so it's clear that all of our settlements, it was because of water. I mean, that's how it kind of started. So I do think that it was just like this perfect little mixture of this is a good place. It's got things that we're looking for. I guess maybe the only negative is like harsh winters, but I guess they didn't care about that back then.
The old pioneer spirit of tough it out.
Yeah, they didn't have whatever his name is on WYFF telling them to buy milk and eggs, and then nothing happened. So they're just like, oh, it's snowing. We'll figure that out. Nonetheless, so I do think it was kind of a combination, just more or less a perfect storm for being able to become what it is. Just like you said, with the protected harbor, the deep waters, things like that, and then just Manhattan being the shape that it is, and people being smart enough to say, let's use this in an effective manner.
Yeah.
And it just kind of grew from there. So that's kind of how I think about it, and I mean, I would say that's how many other cities are too. So.
Yeah, I would say it's a lot of that, especially when you're on this early career path of being a city. Natural advantages are your biggest friend, obviously.
Exactly.
The same reason if you're playing a sport, height is typically, or agility, athletic ability. Those natural advantages you just can't make up. I think later on you see cities that are able to kind of overcome and get more of like man-made kind of features. But I'd say majority of cities are only able to be viable. Large cities are only being able to be viable because they started from some sort of leg up.
Right.
I think very few cities started anywhere where there's nothing.
Right.
I think that makes it very hard.
It seems like water is a key feature.
Water is typically, especially in that. Well, when you have.
I mean, even for us, I didn't even think about it, but we've got a river, and that was kind of how like the plants and the mills started, like in Greenville, and then you go down to Columbia. Like, I mean, there's water not too far from everywhere.
So, well, I mean, that's your mode of transportation. That's your mode eventually for mills and things that we're trying to run.
So especially back then. I mean, that was what it was.
And back then, that is going to set up of where people are already kind of coming together and gathering around. You're normally going to have kind of that building on process, unless you just have some like catastrophic, event where people leave and it's over with.
Right.
But yeah, I would say water, key feature. I mean, it brings the people together. You need it to survive.
That's
you need it to move around.
That's true.
Hand in hand there. So New York with all these advantages, or actually New Amsterdam at that point in time. Excuse me.
Nice, good call there. I didn't know that, thankfully.
Yeah, there we go. Drop that in there. It's this commercial outpost. It's really functioning as this like organic port city of where you're getting somewhat that we touched on, these agglomeration effects. So if you're having economics come together of, well, if you're having ships come in and I need workers are staying there that work on the ships, unload. You have financing there because if you want to go on a voyage or anything, well,
you gotta have money.
You need money. Even back then, if it was half a shilling, you needed it.
A couple of shekels.
Yeah, a couple of shekels and a handshake. So you have people gathering around. This is also where you're really seeing the early grid system start to form. Of you're kind of having this little shaggy town of where you're making this mishmash of streets, and you're having a couple of one-story buildings along it, where people are easily kind of navigating and going about their business. But in around 1664, the English take over settlement, and that's when it actually is New York, as it will become known and loved through its ups and downs. And that kind of gave us, not a major shift, but it established it more as from this just commercial outpost to more of a city and a town. But the English became more of a permanent thing as they wanted it for their power of their empire. They wanted to set it up to start colonizing the Americas. So that's when you kind of just have a shift more in what it's becoming of like investments kind of come in and brought up. So that's a major part of it. And that also, this very important part is the Lower Manhattan being developed as it was. Because you'll see later on when we get to the grid, not the foreshadow, but it is this mishmash down there and you're like, why did they do that? Well, because roads are one of the most immovable objects that there ever is, and once it's laid down, it's not going anywhere.
Right.
Hate to tell people that, but breaking news here, it's not happening.
Newsflash.
So I think kind of a interesting question is, how do you feel about those older areas? Because it's unique in all of them. Of like you have this kind of unorganized method of getting around. Sometimes you might have more historical buildings there. But do you think it'd be better just come in and should have laid the grid all the way down, or come in and make it in modernized, or what's the take?
This is gonna be bad again. Again,
there's no right or wrong answer.
I kind of think it's good to have a little bit of both, because I like being uniform and everything like that, and I like the straight roads and streets and whatever else. But at the same time, it can almost kind of look too man-made. It doesn't look organic enough. Mm-hmm. So I would have to be on the fence again, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's also just to show, like, each of them, whether we know it or not, obviously had a purpose. So they for some reason thought that this was a good idea or not, or this was a bad idea, and went one way or the other. And so I would assume that they had planned it out, and they, as I said, they each had a purpose, and so they were like, okay, we should follow through with this. And then it has obviously now sprouted and grown, and people have somehow miraculously, it seems like they've all made the perfect decision. Kind of as I said earlier, it's just like a perfect storm. It's got all the perfect attributes. Like they just all made the right decisions, far before obviously they knew what would come of it. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But
yeah,
and I think if you look at the outs, like the other boroughs, it does look a bit more organic, where there's just streets and stuff. I don't think it's as much of a grid. I could be wrong. I probably am, but
Well, Lower Manhattan is where you have
it does kind of squeeze in.
Squeezes. Now, when you get more to like the top, you also have where the grid kind of. It's harder to keep the exact grid pattern because you're running into like weird shapes. I would say 7/8 of it is probably a solid.
I know down on like the very like you said, on the very bottom, like I guess near like Wall Street and stuff like that. It kind of does like taper inwards, and I think I've watched some videos, or you told me about like how they kind of built out that portion of Manhattan, like it wasn't originally there, and they just started kind of.
Wall Street and all of that down there of Lower Manhattan. That's where you had the first. That's where the first city is. The first kind of township was there. And those roads, I imagine, were built largely not on a whim, but kind of randomly. I imagine it was more built as necessity. So I imagine you started out with a small pocket. You built kind of some houses around it, some stores, whatever. And then, all right, well, we now have stores on the other side of the street. And now we're going to build a road here. And then go around, and these people are going to be like a single, and it just kind of developed itself. I highly doubt anyone was there being like, let me draw in the sand this road design, because
that's probably true.
I don't know.
They had the compass out.
Yeah, man. They was walking around with the compass.
This is north.
Let's hit it in between north, northeast.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Yeah, so that's why that's really random. The top is just more, I think, where the grid like doesn't exactly line up nicely.
Play out.
Yeah. But the grid is going to be a major part, because that's, obviously I think when you think of New York, that's one of the staples of it, is the fact that it is this pattern that is
for sure
easy to think about. But kind of going back, when either you were there or where you've kind of traveled to, do you think there's any parts that really stand out in your mind of being like a good historical kind of district that was kept well, that it's like really interesting when you got to see it?
I don't know if there's one spot. I do find it very interesting that they were smart enough to also like, say, hey, we should probably have like a park here in the center of this bad boy. Like if it grows to what we think it's going to grow to, we should probably keep some trees and grass around.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that area kind of down towards the bottom of Lower Manhattan was a bit more interesting because the roads were a tiny bit more narrow. You kind of did get that natural feel. I think there's a couple like, brick or cobblestone or whatever type of streets and stuff. Like you kind of do get more of that. I would probably compare it to Boston in terms of other cities I've been to, where it's just kind of like, it seems like this street's been here for 300 years. Yeah. And so I think down in Soho was one area where I felt like the streets got kind of a little bit tighter. Like it wasn't like, when you're in Midtown or wherever, and the streets are ginormously wide, and there's buses and cars, and like there's a bus lane, a bike lane, a car lane, a walking lane. Like, how do you have this much room
to get all that?
So that was probably kind of interesting now that you made me think about that, because I guess it popped up in my mind then, but I just didn't really care enough, or I didn't dive into it. But so
no, it's road design is a very interesting, kind of challenging concept to.
That's obviously
navigate.
Very evident.
It is large. The ideal situation is kind of what you first mentioned of, you have this giant space, how can we turn this 8-lane highway into something navigable? That's where like a downtown Greenville is the prime example of, you went from, I believe it was like a 6-lane highway going through downtown, and all of a sudden you do a road diet down to a 2-lane, and you bring in some massive sidewalks, trees.
Yep.
Prime example. I mean, probably one of the best examples there is.
Yep.
But now, what do you do when you have a heavily congested 2-lane or 4-lane, road? That's where it gets very complicated of how can we integrate like a bike lanes or a bus lane into this. And that's not easy. There's no simple way, because everyone's going to
think about it differently.
Yeah, everyone's going to look at it differently. You're going to have disagreements in the public. You're going to have disagreements in kind of how you're doing it. You're going to look at numbers of like how many cars are traveling, how many people are turning.
How much is it going to cost? Is it worth it?
Cost is another massive factor, as throughout all the time is. So yeah, it's an ever-evolving process of trying to figure out what can make this most viable to bring in people and either keep them here or get them through, depending on whatever the situation would be. Varies by the place. But yeah, I think it is very important for these, for these big cities to have those lower sections of where you can see and feel like this is different than the rest of the place. So I think it kind of grounds you somewhat to the importance of what's going on around you and what kind of has happened here. I think if they just tore down everything and just made it a grid, which they could have done probably at that time. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you'd just lose some of that feel of it.
Exactly.
It's not as special of a place as it could be. But I think that about a lot of, like Charleston would be, if you tore down all the houses and just made it completely modernized, not really be the same. If you go to any really historical or any big city with a historical kind of section, I think it does. It makes it unique, adds character to the place you're going. I don't think anyone wants to be in a sterile. Every city you went to was in a grid pattern with the. It's
kind of boring.
Yeah. Funny enough, though, Savannah that you mentioned, they were the first to have a grid. When they first got there, they laid a grid pattern for their. I don't know if they colonized at that point or just like a city, like a small town. But they were the first ones to actually lay like a grid, and yeah. So interesting. Fun fact. Have to bounce around.
Please also edit in the number of times we say grid.
Yeah, I think grid that'd be an interesting
it's
game.
Probably gonna pop up a good bit.
Yeah, it's hard to get around. Not if you know how to navigate it.
Go on.
Anyways, we'll now jump along on our story of New York, and kind of tying into this historical section is that one, you have this deeply tied colonial roots that you brought in and you made this magnificent place that got to ground up, but you also had a lot of displacement and you had a lot of problems going on with it. And I think part of the interesting thing that city planning later does is trying to, I don't know if memorial rights, excuse me.
No, you're good.
But to recognize that these things happened through like murals. Struggling on my M's.
M's are bad.
M's are taking me down. But how do you make these things memorable? And I think that's interesting later on, as you're seeing kind of cities do now, like through these arts districts is a cool thing, and like tying it in just through either preservation of land or housing and adding in like a historical piece. So that's interesting. But the very big thing that happened here is the American Revolution, because that did change the way things were going there.
Yeah. Started taxing us, and then it was just all down, actually, it was downhill for a tiny sliver of time. There it was straight uphill. So. Yeah.
So we become, our own nation now. Hoorah. About to celebrate it on the 4th.
Love it.
Shout out. Great.
Love it.
Also another great time to do this. So now, 1785, 1790, you have New York as the national capital during the Articles of Confederation. Interesting thing to think about.
Makes sense.
You don't really think about, honestly. And George Washington was inaugurated in New York City.
Also interesting.
Yeah. So a lot going on there. So this is basically where a lot of things are happening. And now I think we're going to jump on forward to more of getting more into like the modern section. It's basically through that times up until about 1800s, you're basically just America's figuring itself out. That's what's going on. Not a whole lot there's probably a bunch of things that a historian can pull that happened in New York, but for the overall party, we're going to press on.
You can just label it as growth.
Yeah,
Growth that'll be good enough.
Some growth happened. Basically. So now we're at this New York. We have the harbor. We have a city that's now kind of getting developed. What happens next? Erie Canal, massive. So now what can we do? We can go across basically, half the United States. We can go all the way on.
I was hoping you were going to say the Statue of Liberty.
I mean, I don't.
I think I'm ahead. Am I ahead?
You're a little bit ahead.
Okay.
That's all right. But now New York is truly this front door to America. As you can imagine, now you don't only stop there, you can travel all the way on and bring goods, deliver them, and also, at that time, very importantly, pick them up and leave.
Yep.
Because now, as we're a growing nation, we want to export things. Because money. And
import. Money.
That's what we want.
Shut up, Mr. Krabs.
Yeah, basically, that is what we're going for. So you're connecting the kind of Atlantic trade routes, now the inland markets is the big part of that. Another big thing is Croton. I think that's right. I don't know, I'm going to say Croton. We're going to go with it. Could be butchering the name. Sorry about it. Croton. That might happen again. Sorry for all the people with the names, but
that's probably Croton.
I think
if it's not Croton, then I'm calling it Croton, and we're going to move on.
We're going to move on. Aqueduct. Know that word.
Yep.
We have now clean water getting to the city. Big win, as we started with.
It is a big win.
Water, very important.
Extremely important.
Salt water,
no good.
Not good. So now you have that coming in. You're also getting more people kind of arriving. That's happening. Growth. So everything's kind of increasing, ramping up capacity to somewhat, and this is important that they did all of this because this infrastructure is hitting around the same time that growth is coming on. So they weren't so far ahead of it. They didn't have money to invest into it, to strain your finances, and you weren't far enough behind where now whatever you do can't catch up.
Right.
So that's a big part of this, because all of this is your, invisible infrastructure is the name of it, and that's going to be your road, sewer. Everything you don't think about on a day-to-day kind of falls into that category and should work. And when it doesn't work, it's highly noticeable.
Right. Power that's underground, stuff like that.
Yeah. Bingo. Yeah. When you have a massive pothole in the road, you notice it pretty quickly when
that
your car
is not invisible.
It's not invisible anymore. The road should be invisible. When your water line doesn't work, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Power's out. All these things. They didn't really have to worry about power so much then, but regardless, the point is there.
They were still at the candles.
When the candle guy doesn't come around, that's the issue. So, kind of with those big inventions or big kind of infrastructure investments, what would you take as the most important one to it between the Erie Canal and the Croton Water Aqueduct?
Well, I don't know, because as we have kind of been referencing multiple times so far, the importance of water, and especially back then, even today, look at what we've got going on right now. But, the trade is so important, and as at that time, a growing nation, you've got to start, trading, importing and exporting. And so it would be hard to say, because that's such an integral piece. Like the canal would, it's such an integral piece, and obviously the harbor that it more or less has been based around is an integral piece. But being able to have actual, fresh water in comparison to salt water,
that's pretty essential.
I don't know. But that's a hard decision. I would say in terms of the human growth, the water duct was more important. In terms of the growth of the nation, the canal was more important.
I think it's a very good answer. To throw a wrench in your plans, if I put the grid in there, would that
You're saying this sarcastically.
Well, guess what I might be talking about next? Guess what's coming?
Well, I'll let you get there, and then
you want me to tell you about the grid and then see if
give me a little bit more.
A little synopsis of what happened. So
historic rundown.
Absolutely. So 1811, the grid is dropped. A little bit before that, you had 1807, where New York State approves kind of to make this plan, and then you adopted it and kind of got it moving along the way. Now. Before I swayed you with my persuasive language that I wrote in here, what this system did was create a simple real estate development pattern for everyone to follow. So everything is laid out from Lower Manhattan up to where you have tracts of land that are pretty much all the same. You can easily tax them. You can easily sell them. You can easily pretty much develop them because you know exactly what is to come. So it's repetitive, it's pretty efficient, and its overall feature. You could make an argument that it did take away kind of scenery and like the natural topography of everything, and I think that's valid. I think nowadays we just more think of it as such a feature of it that you don't really like
100%
imagine it any other way. And truly I think it fits pretty well, like for the just city itself. It just seems fitting. Now maybe I'd be swayed if they developed it in this mishmash pattern of snake roads. I don't know. But overall the grid itself was the city's operating system of we're going to develop, we're going to be able to do it quickly, efficiently, everyone can get it done. So that's kind of everything it made itself possible to do. I don't feel like mentioning any of those people because, once again, that's a bunch of names, but there's a bunch of people that helped on make this happen. But yeah, so does that sway your decision now of any between the canal,
water duct,
aqueduct, and the grid?
It probably still.
I'd say it could probably only beat out the canal, or the aqueduct.
It would probably piggyback on that from the sense of, again, it kind of helps stimulate that growth because, like you said, it made things a whole lot easier to develop. I mean, even if I'm no electrician or I don't know anything about power lines or anything like that, but same sewer and plumbing. But I feel like if you have things running in squares, I feel like that's got to be easier.
Straight line,
straight line. If you come to an intersection, you got a four-way. We can go about this and keep on moving. So again, I just feel like that probably helped more from just the growth of the city. And to me, probably the most interesting part about it, and I don't know if you'll get to it or not, but the thing that I always think about is, like, again, how did they possibly anticipate this? Or even if they weren't anticipating, how are they smart enough to be like, we should at least build this so if it does continue to grow, we can continue to expand? Because I feel like, obviously I love Greenville, not to knock on our city here, but and there's more and more people moving, every day. But in terms of the downtown itself, it's more or less landlocked, in my opinion. You've got the river on one side, you got Church Street Bridge on another. I suspect, I would assume, and maybe you could use the word predict, but any flat spot that you find downtown now, they're just going to start building up on it just because, that's just how it's going to be. More people moving here, more businesses moving here, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I always think about is it's just, how did they think about that? One, but maybe two, it was obvious because they had the capabilities. I don't know if we'd have gone back in time to like when Greenville was first being founded or whatever, you could even look at it where it's totally, barren and say, oh, well, we can do all of this and lay it out in X manner and it be kind of perfect, which is one reason why, again, I kind of think that New York was that perfect storm where it's got the perfect, shape to the land in the whole 9 yards in terms of it being a harbor and everything else.
Yeah.
In comparison to us, we've got more topography.
Mm-hmm.
We've just got more going on, so it's not as, I'm gonna use the term cookie cutter, even though I'm sure back then when these people were planning this out, they didn't think it was a cookie cutter. So
yeah,
not to knock them, that's not what I'm saying, but I just feel like it's difficult nowadays because.
Well, you got to think also at the time you don't have, you wouldn't have really probably any public engagement. You wouldn't have any public, you might have negative feedback coming to you then, but at that point the government and kind of authority kind of had total say so.
Right.
So it didn't really matter. And that's pretty clear up until about the 1960s. Of like you were able to do a lot of what New York did because you just had this top-down looking. I'm
and
going
maybe
to
that's what
do what I think is best. I think one good example in Europe, I believe it's Britain, but they build, I believe, their water and sewer like 3 times or X amount of times larger than they needed at the time because they realized we're not going to be able to come back and do this again. Like,
it's smart to think about stuff like that.
And so I kind of imagine these were similar conversations happening of like, we're not going to be able to, once again, once you lay a road, that's where it is. Not really going to be able to do much with it. So I kind of think those were those conversations between the politicians and whoever else is kind of orchestrating it of, we're going to have development, we're seeing growth, we're having people flock here, we are a major city. I mean, you kind of probably have to, I mean, I imagine they knew that at the time.
I would probably agree with that, yeah.
And so I think they're like, how could we best lay out this system? Now, how you come up with it, I don't know, because naturally you kind of think, if I wanted to lay a road design, well, squares and rectangles makes quite a bit of sense versus like snaking it down. So I don't know. I don't know if that was his natural kind of human instinct and looking at like...
That's what I'm saying. Like, were they just... I don't know. Did they just get that lucky? Were they that smart? I don't know. I kind of think it was a mixture of both. So.
I think it's always a mixture of both.
Yeah,
I don't think it's ever just one thing or the other. I think they just had the right people in the right rooms at the right time, and 100%. It all worked out for them. But overall, it is an icon. To me, it is just kind of I'll take it as brilliant over boring. I think it's a true show of kind of thinking ahead, planning out, and I think it is the character of the place now. At the time, they might have disagreed, and they wanted their snaking country roads, but it is what it is now, and I think I kind of see it as the scenery of the place almost.
Right.
But it's interesting how that all works out over time.
It does seem to always work out. When you say snaking roads, that did make me think, though, it's also interesting because we've got, places not too far away from us where there was no other option. So, that's another factor that I feel like they just, as we said, they were just kind of in that right place at that right time. Because, if you're driving up to the mountains, probably going through a couple tunnels, going through curvy roads, it's not like, hey, we can go straight to this mountain. So...
Now, it does blow me away they didn't try. Like, I don't think they're going to go. Let's just put a ton of dynamite and let's just straight.
No matter how much is above us, don't even worry about the rock above us. Let's just
straight down the pipe.
A little hole for this bad boy all the way.
I just thought it would have given it more of an effort, But I don't know. I think there is something when you're in the mountain roads of the curvy road is just part of it.
Would that fall into highway planning? Is that a subset of city planning?
Well, I mean,
or road planning? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know how in depth we're getting here. I think we maybe need to keep it
a little up.
Yeah, keep it low level here.
At this point, you're not making to build a road like a new highway is a very intensive project.
I bet so.
You have not been able to do that for a while. You can kind of revitalize, highways that need widening or whatever, if you have kind of the right of way, or the government already has the right of way. That falls a lot. That's transportation planning, basically, is what that falls into majorly because transportation.
That makes more sense than highway planning.
Yeah,
transportation.
But I imagine there is probably a subsector that's like highway specific, like that's all they do. You probably have a set of consultants out there. That's what their specialty is, I imagine.
Bunch of engineers and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a lot of what it'd be. It'd be mostly engineers and maybe like a planner or architect or something. That's on there. But yeah, it's interesting. Planning's the same as probably every other field of where you can fall into these very niche or
you got it.
Niche. Nope, it ain't happening. Specialized areas.
Niche. There you
go. I'm just gonna fumble with words throughout this whole thing, but hey, we all do our best.
We're good.
But yeah, it just falls into those specialties of you can be airport planning, very interesting. Campus planning, pretty interesting. Transportation is very interesting. Environmental, and I imagine environmental has tons of forks that you can go down.
Now we're getting into the portion of the iceberg that is
below the water. So we're going to navigate back up to our favorite city, New York. So you have the grid, you have all of these infrastructure that we just talked about. You're now getting millions of people to come here, and now that you're going to have to try to deal with, you're getting the melting pot of you're having all these cultures meet, coming to the city, want to establish roots, live the American dream. You have opportunity. You also have interesting, overcrowding. Public health is becoming a kind of issue. I think, what's one major issue you could think of with overcrowding?
Outside of public health?
Probably in public health specifically.
Yeah, definitely. Especially back then, people getting ill and it spreading like wildfire.
Right. Disease. Major thing. Major problem. Disease, illness, whatever. Yeah, the flu. That'll take you down.
Especially back then.
Very poor sanitation, fire risk.
That's true.
Very big one as well, because didn't exactly think of fire escapes back then.
That's a good point. Especially considering, that was their light.
Well, yeah, I think something very important to
light and heat, I guess.
That as well. With tenement housing was the major housing product then. And what those basically were, if I had a 10 by 10 square, I built my kind of apartment or tenement house basically to the edges of that complete complete boundary. But the problem that you fall into is there's not really a major sewage system. There wasn't really toilets exactly around back then. So what happened in the alleys straight behind? Tons of sewage just thrown back there, whatever happened. You also have to think this time you had horse and carriage, which was going around. Well, there wasn't really animal-friendly, conversations happening. So you had horses that died.
PETA didn't exist back then.
Side of the road. There was not a PETA back then. They would have probably put up some numbers on.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been too happy.
But yeah, so you have human waste. You have horses that are dying. You have horse waste. You have also probably people that die and probably get put there. You also have rodents going around. Not a very great place to be in. I think a lot of this is, if you think about that time and people wanting to avoid cities, this is a large part of it. Of that, when you're in there, the health was completely diminished. Another important part is we haven't gotten there yet. There's no zoning laws or anything. So if I want my meat processing factory to be right next to your tenement house with your sewer run down, chuck my carcass out, hate for you. It's going right there. Or if I have my, paper mill right there next to you, you're just inhaling the fumes straight out of the gasket. So, a lot of things that you don't really think about. But
it's funny talking about it that way. Obviously it wasn't good, but it's funny. It's definitely got a little bit of a comedic effect.
There is,
because like you said, you can have a tenement house, and then just down the road you've got your butcher, and it's just like, we're throwing dung into the same place.
Yep, and it is not funny for all the people
who lived back then. Don't get me wrong.
But looking back at it, it's like a common sense thing of why were we doing this?
Yeah, let's maybe not have our food next to our dumper.
No, so let's not all be doing that. So you're having this massive buildup of basically disease-ridden parts of the city. So public health is extremely bad, and this is what's really kind of getting important. And we're getting a little bit closer to city planning, still not there yet, but in Soho, London, across the way, you had John Snow, who then had the cholera water outbreak there, and he was the first person to actually map and show how disease can come from like a water pool or like a common drinking area. So this light bulb goes off for people. So it's innovative in the fact that he actually did mapping and drew it out. It's also innovative in the terms of public health of, wow, disease can come from where our drinking water has come, and the past 12 people that got their bucket there died. We got it now.
Maybe we shouldn't drink out of that
yes.
spigot.
So this really kind of shone the light on everything. That, all right, maybe we need to clean up our act a little bit.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. So, getting close here, I think we'll go ahead and jump to it, but this idea of, all right, we need a clean air, you obviously need some air coming in, you can't just have these kind of distilled places, as that was a major, missed that on the rip. Major part of the tenement house was they built as many apartments as they could. So there was not a window requirement for every, as there is now.
I was about to say, to my understanding, when they were taught about in school, it was like literally get as many people in there as possible almost.
Yes, so you could have like
One
inside
room.
apartments that had no light, no air, no anything, with a couple of families in them because, well, you had immigrant families coming over with very little money. They're going to pile into a room to make it affordable because that's all you can get.
Right.
So, major problems in there in themselves. Package onto that everything we've been saying about disease and everything else. So, what do we come up with? Central Park and the park system and developing these of, all right, maybe we shouldn't just build everything in. Maybe we do need this open to have air and sunlight to get in there. So, 1853, New York puts out this bid to design Central Park. And Frederick Law Olmsted, he is the dude when it comes to park planning. He's the guy, if you ever said his name around some city planning people, they'll be like, dang, he knows ball.
He is the Michael Jordan.
He is the Michael Jordan when it comes to
park planning.
He is the guy. So he wins the kind of bid to design this, and he goes on to make it become kind of what it is now. It's built kind of section by section, clearly, because it is a massive piece.
A lot of land, yeah. That's true.
I think interesting about this is that they did use eminent domain, and this was really the first kind of really large-scale project that it was used for. They took that central part. You had the Seneca Village there, and those people kind of just got bought out and told to leave. Probably not exactly most friendly, kind of with the times, unfortunately. But in exchange, now you have this massive public park that does do a lot of public benefit. So I was going to ask, do you think Central Park would be possible today? But I think you would agree that's probably not happening.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, if you're talking about in terms of like, there were already people there and uprooting them, not even close.
Yeah, if you already had houses where it is at now, I don't think you're making it happen.
Especially to the scale that it is. I think that that's one thing that people probably
don't understand.
If they've never been to New York City, and you just see it on movies or whatever, I just don't think people do fully understand how big it is.
I think even on the map, you don't really realize.
True.
Until we walked it, because we only walked about half of it when we went, and it took us a long time. I don't want to say, I kind of want to say around an hour, but I don't want to say much.
I would believe that for sure.
I'll say at least an hour. So yeah, I mean, it's a very big part, but I think the cool thing about it is you'll see people in there and going around it, and everyone's using it kind of, and you have people like us that were just strolling and seeing it. You had your everyday people that are like running in there and biking and doing whatever. So it is interesting as this meeting ground, and also coming from this root of actually being as a health tool and not just a scenery and just a scenic object.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So it helped kind of in more ways than one. Of you got this scenic, beautiful aspect that
they're making a health push,
and we're also now actually getting some, get
out of your shack and go take a walk in the park.
Go take a little stroll. Once you're done with your, 5 to 5, go hit the trail. But with that, next, they kind of look back at the housing and figure out we should probably start doing something about that as well because issue. So 1867, you get the first Tenement Housing Act, which, as we discussed, housing was not very well built. So this kind of just legally acknowledged that these do exist. Before that, I feel like they're just kind of like the old, put the blinders on, and I don't really want to deal with that.
Didn't see you over there.
Yeah. So at that point, they got innovative things like fire escapes. Boom. Good idea. We added some windows in there. Now every sleeping room had to have a window. That's big, considering how many units are probably just inside. So that's massive. And then you also had to have a toilet, but I believe it was like more of a communion toilet. We weren't jumping to individual toilets. Don't get crazy.
But we did make some
we made some big strides there. Those were big strides. And the architectural design part that's interesting about this is you see the tenement change from being this block to now more of like a dumbbell shape, because you can put a stairway in the middle, and that way you meet the window requirement. You have access up and down, and you can still fit pretty much as many rooms as you want. So interesting when you see kind of the older buildings like that are more in the dumbbell, and it truly looks like a dumbbell. That's kind of why they started getting built that way.
These are good facts to know, Dylan.
Yeah,
this is interesting.
I hope it is.
I mean, I'm glad that things like that, make sense. Like, because obviously, if I'm walking by that, I'm like, man, I wonder why that building's shaped like that.
Yeah,
it did have a purpose.
So that's pushing into that light and air aspect that people probably need these to be well and healthy.
Right.
So getting access to that, and largely when you see a building shaped like that, and you're wondering why is it shaped like that, there's 10 out of 10 probably a reason that it's shaped like that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So that's really where that kind of idea comes from. After that, you jump and you get this guy, Jacob Riis, and what he does is pretty innovative. Is he goes into these tenement housing stills with a camera and photographs everything going on in them, and publishes kind of like a picture book, I guess, and sends it out. And you have the public be like, wow, guys, yo, what's going on here? I think interestingly, he named it How the Other Half Lives. And I think that's kind of fitting for the time, because it's truly showing, like, wow, guys, this is really what's going on.
Right.
And so now you kind of got to push for more laws to come in, which this increased the same things of kind of lighting, airing, plumbing, safety, all of that. But interestingly now you added in setbacks. So now you couldn't be total lot coverage. Now you had to have some sort of setback. And when I'm saying setback, that means how far the building can be either from the front of the parcel kind of boundary. So if you had a 10-foot setback, it would have to be 10 feet back from the front there. Now you can have front, side, rear. I couldn't tell you exactly how they laid it out, but it's no longer saying you can be total lot coverage, which is pretty big, because that falls into health, safety, and well-being of the people. You need to be able to push it back. It also now allows for more things like sidewalks and kind of later on more improvement of kind of areas along of like when you're walking by, of let's make it nice for people to come in here and not just be like, bam, straight on the curb.
You're walking on the road,
yeah,
and there's a tenement house right here.
Bang, just
instead, we brought you a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Okay, now you can't get run over by a horse.
Yeah. So, very big strides there in about 30, 40-ish years of pretty massive improvements in terms of we found out about diseases and illness and where it can come from, and then we made changes to our laws to actually now fit kind of this housing and building it up. So it's interesting how that all kind of works together. I think now you could, very early on, I don't know what they were thinking in terms of codes, but I imagine some of the developers probably had pushback on these of we don't want
of course
to follow these or whatever.
Anything that would cost them money or not allow them to make more money is a thought as well.
Yeah, but I think like if there was no codes, I don't even think you could really. I mean, I just kind of picture a city in total chaos. I don't think it would really go that well. I don't know if you have a slightly different version, but to me, it's like, well, if there's just no rules, you end up with just a mishmash. You know?
I would agree. I mean, like if you don't have, obviously now to us, it's kind of obvious. It's like, hey, we should probably have some fire escapes, things like that. You know. Those things are important, and they should probably be considered. And other things, you know, to prevent. I feel like a lot of, I mean, at least to my knowledge, a lot of codes are just more or less trying to prevent things from occurring, especially in terms of, you know, building a house or something like that. I know we're talking maybe more on a city level and like an apartment style thing, but I mean, there's risks to both, and so if they're not mitigated properly, then they can obviously cause whoever's living there some harm. So I would say that those are definitely important. Probably one of those things where it's kind of like, you know, at first you're like, hey, we just fought against the British because they were taxing our tea, and now you're trying to put all these codes on us. It's like, come on, what are you doing? I thought we were free people around here.
I imagine there's still some of that kind of animosity towards, you know, I don't know, I probably didn't say the man, but the government.
Of course. I mean, yeah, that stuff happens nowadays. It's like when people are like, oh, you know, it's like that kangaroo the other day. I think kangaroos are illegal to own in South Carolina, and that one was out there on the road in Spartanburg or whatever. It's like, hey, why are those illegal? We're not really sure. We think they're known to box people. You know what I mean? Like it's So maybe that's a bit like way too obscure, but still, I think the point is it's just like when we have, you know, driving laws. Otherwise, it would be total chaos, as you said. Like people would just be doing what they wanted to do.
Yeah,
people would be dying. Yeah. So let's try and cut down on that.
It's trying to avoid unnecessary harm, I think, is really the main thing.
Yeah, 100%.
How can we first help the well-being of everyone, and then kind of how can you make life incrementally better?
Right.
To me, that's kind of how I believe this was thought about.
Right.
In progression. But yeah, I don't. Otherwise, you go back to where you started of there's total chaos and total monstrosity of a city being built that no one really wants to be in.
Right.
So you gotta obviously lay those ground rules. As we get on into more of like the historical preservation that comes on later in, that brings in a more interesting argument. And I think when we get to it, can kind of dive into that more of where is the line between basic codes and more I don't want to say unnecessary, but more rigidness.
Right.
I guess.
A bit more
the word.
Strict.
Yeah.
A lot less fun. Just kidding.
But right now, we're in the fun part of we're growing. We're getting big. Big Apple is getting big, you know?
It's on the tree.
It's on the tree, and it is on the come up. So, now, what you're going to do is continue to invest in that infrastructure. So you're going to have bridges being built. You're going to have the Brooklyn Bridge, which is pretty massive, as that physically connects Manhattan and Brooklyn. But that's also going to connect economics. Now you're having people come back and forth, and you're having more things turn, which is really big in this. I think right here getting access to the island is a big part of it. It's going to be hard to be successful if you're just isolated. Makes sense. Then 1898. What you had was a consolidation of the 5 boroughs. You want to give a shot at them? Naming the 5?
Brooklyn, Manhattan, Bronx, Queens. Oh, what am I missing? Hold
Pete Davidson has a movie.
No, that doesn't help me. Just hold on. Brooklyn, Manhattan, Bronx, Queens, and then. Oh, this is gonna drive me nuts. How did I forget this?
I think it's probably the most memorable.
Really? Oh, this is gonna be bad.
You want it?
Hold on. Let me dig a little bit.
Let me give you a first letter.
Yeah.
S. Nope. Staten Island.
Oh yeah, I did know that. I did know that. I just don't. Yeah, I don't think about that too much. So, but God,
dang. Well,
I failed my New York City test.
You're out.
Dang it.
Down and out.
I got the ones that were close by though.
Yeah, I'll say you got the.
And I can point to all of those on a map. So
that's very impressive.
Yeah.
There you go.
Staten Island, I can obviously point to on a map as well because it's
stands out a little bit.
Yeah. It's pretty evident.
If I had to take a guess, which one is Staten Island? I'll have a pretty good guess.
Oh, I'll close my eyes.
So you're having bridges, tunnels, consolidation, all of this coming together, and tying things together, which is big economically along with kind of how you're going to be dealing with problems. It's no longer you're kind of scattered out. It's more of a kind of regional issue, I guess. It's not just looking at what's my boundaries and what's my issues, but how do we come together to solve this problem? And I think that's where now you start to make some. I think that's where they did pretty well. If I had to kind of name a piece of how you now take all this investment and advantages that you had and continue on, it's coming together. Because some places fail because you don't ever deal with problems as a unit. So when you try to deal with problems at a city level, or if you have a city that won't work with a county or whichever, vice versa,
right?
Your problems obviously don't end at your municipality line. You know, it's just not how many of the problems work.
Of course. So
that was a big stride to continue growth. And I think here, I think it's very agreeable that if you're a fast-growing city, it'll just make sense to kind of move like one unit. And so that's why it's great that they did. And with that, you now have other things getting built up. So subway, big part of it. Makes New York kind of New York.
Very fascinating thing.
We're now off the grid and going to say subway. That's the new word of the day.
Subway counter.
Yeah, subway. So it connected everything. Lower Manhattan, all the way up. So now you can reach jobs. You can also live somewhere and go to a job. You can go to recreation. If you want to go eat somewhere, you can travel down. So now you're spreading out, and everyone is more connected and able to disperse how they want to. So access is always the biggest thing that you need to keep increasing. I would say that falls into the category of one of the biggest impacts is a fast way to reach people. Subway did it really well.
That is fact.
I think it'd be interesting. Do you think it'd be pretty interesting if more cities had them? Because
I do. Obviously, you probably have to put down some type of threshold where it's once you reach this many people and can more or less prove that this many people would, one, be willing to use public transportation, two, actually benefit from it, then I would think so. I mean, again, I think New York is a little bit unique because it's just you've got people coming from so many different places. I don't really work with him, but every once in a while we communicate because of work. And he lives in New York, and he literally lives out on Long Island, or maybe it's Staten Island, I don't know. Gets on the train and rides all the way in to Manhattan. It's wow, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
He said it takes him an hour. I'm who knows how long that would take you in a car. I don't know. It would probably be obviously longer just due to traffic.
Right.
But from the standpoint of, obviously when I've been in New York and I'm downtown per se on that, lower end down near Wall Street or whatever, and I want to get up to Central Park or like the Upper East Side or the Upper West Side or wherever, it's just like, oh, you can literally go downstairs, get on the train, and be there in a couple of minutes, and it's just really crazy because if without it, it wouldn't function. Like it would not be able to operate because you have so many people trying to move so many different places. It just wouldn't work. And I think about the subways, but you also have to think about the transportation that people do use above ground. They've got taxis, they've got buses. It's just like if they didn't have all of those resources, they would probably not be, the fast-paced city that it is. I guess it would end up like Atlanta. I don't know. It's like where you've got freaking 18-lane highways in the smack middle of your downtown and your traffic's still terrible.
Yeah. Well, that's where expanding outward is not always going to solve your problem. And that's where a lot of cities fall into. We just added 2 lanes to our highway. But now there's probably a name for the theory. There definitely is. Can't think of it. But the more you widen it, the more people are going to use it because in their mind, well, now it just got widened. It should be faster, so I should be able to get on it. Now you have more people using it, and you can't keep up with either you're going to expand it into infinity, or you got to figure out a different way to go about it. And that gets tricky because obviously the easiest explanation is, throw 2 more lanes on it. Bang, problem solved. Oh,
now I've got 2 more lanes full of cars.
Yeah,
nice.
Unfortunately, that's just not how it works. It would be nice though.
Now we can't make the highway any wider. Nice.
Have you ever thought about a double decker? Another lane, but on top.
How do we do that?
That's where they need to put the Peach Pass or whatever it is, the Easy Pass.
Genuinely.
Just throw it up there. Give them
I don't know how they do it, but just something. I don't know how people live in Atlanta to begin with. No offense to anybody that lives in Atlanta that's watching this, but the handful, maybe a little bit more than a handful of times I've driven through there, it's just like every time I go, it can be 7 a.m., it can be 1 p.m., it can be 3 p.m., it can be 5 p.m. The only time that wasn't bad was leaving a concert at like 12 a.m. and it was still a little bit thick. And it's just like, I'm on I-85, it's 10 lanes wide or whatever. It's probably more than that. It's probably like 12 or 14 or something. How are we stopped?
Yeah.
So
that does bother me. It's very bothersome.
That is I guess that's probably my biggest question about city planning is it's like, not to look into the financial world, but obviously like the Federal Reserve has 2 responsibilities: stable inflation and job employment. City planning should be population growth, whether it be 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And infrastructure to be able to maintain that population growth.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but going out of downtown, like if you're in downtown Greenville and you're heading towards TR, like if you're coming off 385, they've shrank the size of the road. It used to be 4 lanes, now it's 3 lanes. Again, no offense to anybody if anybody's listening that made that decision, but it's just like, what are we thinking? We're a growing city, and maybe you're right. Maybe the more lanes we have just means that the more cars feel like they can drive through there. I don't know.
I would say typically that's kind of how it falls. Normally when you do a road diet like that, which just means taking down the lanes. It's all road diet.
Road diet
means.
Road gets on Ozempic.
Ozempic
really?
For the road. It's shocking. It comes on one of those Ozempic commercials, and it's like, I just plug this into my curb every day, and I've lost 1 lane. But yeah, so when you do a road diet like that, there's multiple reasons. So I can't really speak to what was actually the decision around making, but I think it either does with, 1, expanding it's going to fall into the trap of more people are just going to use it. Either they want to drive investment towards that area,
which would be my theory.
Which would be my top kind of pick, because if you slow down traffic and make it more where people are coming there and looking at it, and you're getting businesses to like come around the area,
right,
where people want to turn off, you don't want to have as many lanes going as fast. You want to slow it down,
which does make sense,
so people stop and turn off and go wherever. Also, that potentially could make it smoother if you're building in kind of like not necessarily a passway, but I don't know, highway or expanding somewhere else to kind of redirect traffic that way if you're looking to either go around the city or whatever it may be. And also it could be that by expanding it over here, we have more room to actually do that, and it's easier to do than if we do it here, since we're backed up to, we don't have any more right of way, or whatever it could be. And it could also just be a mixture of complicated problems that was like, we have to make a decision somewhere. So this is kind of what we're going to have to ride with. It also falls into, it's not in New York where you perfectly planned out a complete grid.
Right.
Major advantage. But it also now falls into, it's not in New York because it doesn't have a subway. Why won't we have a subway? Because it wouldn't really function. I mean, if you're in downtown Greenville, you're in downtown Greenville. I don't really need...
you can walk from one end to the other and it not be a big deal.
I don't need a subway. Or now you have so many micro-mobility through bikes, e-bikes, e-scooter.
Big advocate for the e-scooter, by the way.
Yeah. I think e-scooters are great for
I love a Lime scooter.
I think they're perfect for people just getting around randomly. But that is just where a subway is unique to where you're only in those bigger cities. I think Atlanta would be very hard pressed to make that happen. I think they're trying to make something to the effect or have invested in something.
I mean, I know that they've got MARTA, but like I don't know the paths that MARTA takes and how that works. But I guess my main thing would be...
But it's also like...
They're not as dense in terms of like, you got to think about from literally top to bottom, Manhattan is just like covered in stuff. And I feel like even though Manhattan or Atlanta's big, it's like, you know, there's not skyscrapers literally covering from top to bottom, or, you know, filling as a circle from perimeter.
Well, I'll tell you what, Atlanta, we can do an episode on it itself, because that would be interesting on how I got to where it's at.
Start hating on Atlanta. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, just an episode of trashing Atlanta.
We'll just make...
I'll be very curious on what Atlanta got to where it's at.
Right.
Because I do not know, and I'm not going to claim to know on how it got to where it's at. I do think it's interesting because I think everyone in the world complains about traffic.
Driving through Atlanta.
I think everyone would go out of their way to avoid Atlanta. So I don't think that's, you know, I don't...
A wild take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everyone understands that. But yeah. Going back to New York, 1904, you have subways. 1913, Grand Central Terminal opens. Mobility is being increased across the city. Now, an interesting part going on in the background here is you're getting capped out at your vertical ability right now. Everything is made of brick. With brick, you are very much limited to how high you can go, because you need the walls to be able to support the base, because there's no steel framing yet.
Yeah.
So everyone's limited. Also, walking. There's not really safety. Elevators are becoming a little bit more popular, but no one really trusts them yet, which I don't blame them completely.
I'll say I gotta wait until Mr. Otis comes around.
Yeah. So what happens is you hit this kind of alignment around early 1900s there, where you have steel framing and you have elevators that have now implemented fall safety mechanisms. So if they fall, it's like a stop, basically. You're not going to fall to the ground.
Yep. That's a big move.
That's a massive move.
I barely get on elevators nowadays because I'm afraid to get stuck.
You just want to get your extra steps in.
So you take me back to back then when I could have been in free fall from a couple stories up.
Yeah. Not fun.
Probably wouldn't have been on them. Not me.
No. So now you're able to build up, and what starts to happen is you really get like... Well, there's two things. One, 1916, you have the first zoning ordinance is developed and implemented. It's big. What does this do? It establishes setbacks for buildings. So that's telling buildings how far back they have to be from the boundaries of their individual parcel. And what happens is a lot of these buildings start to develop into these kind of wedding cake shapes. Because back with our public health safety, we want to try to get light and things going through. So you're having the classic, very tiered structures getting built.
Big base, skinny top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. You get Chrysler Building, Empire State Building's built. And then in 61, you have a new zoning ordinance that was more focused on the floor area ratio. And to kind of explain what this is going to be what your total building area divided by your total lot area makes your floor area ratio. And what that means in practical terms, if I have a 10,000 square foot lot and I have a FAR of 5, I can build 50,000 square feet. So it's just multiplying that out of how much can you actually build on your lot. Make it sound more complicated than it needs to be. But that's all it's saying.
That's common.
That's all it's saying is just how much can you build on your lot. You're also getting requirements about parking and open space. And this is where you get rid of kind of the wedding cake, and now you're developing just more like classical skyscrapers as you think of.
The steel comes into play, and
yeah, basically everything's taking off, and also since now you're not limited to those direct setbacks requirements, you kind of build the structure, and you also have the technology to really get everything to where you can build it how you want to and go up. So I mean, that's where you're now actually getting the city skyline. That's really developing. Before that, you were really just capped off kind of
couple story
brick. I can't remember how exactly. I want to say 10 or 12 was maybe the cap, but I can't cite that off the top of my head. But it's not very many that you could build out of a completely brick building. Which I think is obvious. I mean, if your first floor was just, brick, that's, but you're kind of just wasting space there. And in a place like New York, highly valuable. So
space is important.
Don't want to throw it away.
And it's expensive.
Yeah. I think an interesting thing to think about here is with everything we've talked about, especially with the subway, I'm going to pose it more as a question, but do you think New York could exist if everyone had to drive and have a car there? I think no way.
No way. No way at all. I mean, I drive around, again, I mean, obviously I'm comparing a lot of things to Greenville, just obviously because we live here, but even nowadays, you can go downtown Greenville and have a hard time finding a parking spot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're having to have more parking garages, more spots on the sidewalks, but then the spots on the sidewalks take away from the potential businesses or whatever they want to put there, if they do want to put something there or whatever it may be, or just walking lanes or whatever. So yeah, not even. I genuinely think it's not even close. Like if every single person that lived in New York had a car, I feel like they could stack them up through New York City, like on the roads for just miles. It just wouldn't work. I mean,
well, think about the parking garages, like the parking spaces that you would need.
That's what I'm saying.
You wouldn't even have skyscrapers; it'd just be parking garages.
Like you would have to, I guess, try and have underground parking garages that go hundreds and hundreds of feet underground for every foot that you have up above you. So obviously, I personally don't like that idea. So I would definitely say that it's not possible.
I don't think it's happening.
And I also don't think that I don't think that's the attraction of New York. I mean, I can tell you that obviously there's things I don't like about New York, but there's some things that I do like about New York. I mean, being able to walk to stuff, being able to hop on the subway and just zip somewhere and you could be all the way uptown and then your favorite restaurant's all the way downtown and it's 40-minute, 50-minute walk and you can just boom hop on the subway. You're there in 10 minutes. It's just that's nice. I didn't even have to get in my car.
Yeah.
I just had to deal with other people on the subway, which
Yeah.
I don't know how, that's a different
Subway's
story.
its own experience.
That's a different story.
Being on the subway and the luxury of the subway are two different conversations.
Exactly. But I mean, that's part of the territory, so if you have that many people moving through an area,
yeah,
that's just how it goes. But
I think it's part of just getting adopted into being the New Yorker of
100%. Yeah.
deal with being on the subway. And I think kind of what you're saying there, of being able to move around the whole city, is what everyone wants to imagine their city or the big city being.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
And just most of them don't fall into that.
It's hard. I mean, obviously, I haven't lived in obviously, I've only ever lived in Greenville.
Mm-hmm.
And I've only visited a couple
other
of
places,
big cities. But it's like, if I did live in these places, I have no idea how it would work. Like if I lived in Charlotte, would I live downtown Charlotte and walk to work or whatever? Or would I live a little bit outside and drive it? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
In comparison to if I lived in New York City, I'm 98% confident I wouldn't have a car. And I would be taking the subway everywhere. So,
well, I think that's the other part is everything you literally need is there. There's
exactly.
not really like a need for I need to drive out to somewhere else.
100%.
So I think that's the big.
It adds to the perfect storm. It adds to the cake that they've already been in the process of building for quite some time.
That they've been putting on. They really got dealt a good hand and took advantage of it.
Definitely pocket aces, no doubt.
Yeah, and they did pretty swell. An interesting concept to think about is skyscrapers. It's kind of more of a personal vision for them. Do you think of these as more just being like a city as chasing this iconic building, or it's mostly just made out of it's extremely valuable land, so we're going to build up?
To me, it's extremely valuable land. You've only got so much. You're trying to get more and more people in it and on it, so you can build up and have people all the way above your head and things like that. I think maybe back in the day, like I know that Empire State Building at one point in time, they thought that like Zeppelins were going to dock there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that. And the Pan Am Building, they would land helicopters on the top of it and things like that. So,
well, I think there's something to be said that we have the tallest building in the world. It just is like one of those records that you kind of want. It's kind of one of those attractions. I don't know, like, I'm kind of in agreement for the other 99.9%. It's just we need to build out because economically feasible.
I would like to have these offices and these apartments, but we don't have the land, so we'll pick you out a little square and we'll build it as high as we can
go. Stack it up.
Yeah, so we'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, I'm not going to dive down that rabbit hole, but
different rabbit hole.
There's a different rabbit hole, but I'm going to try to avoid and stay on mine.
Stay on track here. We can break this out into multiple episodes.
Yeah. Regional. 1921. You move into this more regional aspect. It's kind of flowing now with everything. And this is where you get the Port Authority of New York. Those guys, basically, they help run things that move all the people around. And this is also acknowledging that this is a regional issue, or not issue, but obstacle that we're trying to overcome. So again, reinforcing this is a group effort, not a solo one-off trying to take on the world. So that's managing, like airport, well, it became JFK, on bridges, tunnels, all of that. They're handling all of that to make sure everyone's flowing in and out of the city as they should be. And then you also have regional planning that's now coming along, that you have city planning emerging. And this is getting everyone on the same page of writing this document that's laying out on how we want our vision to get carried out. So that's very big. You have housing authorities created. Along with this, in the 30s, you had the New Deal programs come about. So that just kind of helped keep things afloat and keep them moving. But then the 40s to the 60s, you run into public housing. And public housing was made out of the best intentions and probably executed
in the worst way.
And not extremely well. So this idea of we're going to have, affordable housing, it's going to be able for everyone to live in. It's a great vision, but a lot of times what it turned into is these isolated developments that aren't really near jobs or where people are trying to go. You more just had it as concentrated poverty in one area of, push them all there. So you're having negative social aspects around them because you're also having people that are not doing as well living together, so you're having crime, and along with other issues going along. So just did not work out exactly how they wanted it to. Urban renewal to me is constantly just a double-edged sword for everyone to try to figure out. It came in and basically redeveloped areas of the city that were running down. But to do that, oftentimes you were kicking out people that had been there, that were living there. So I think it's kind of clear to see you're displacing people, but you're re-energizing an area. I think those just fall into a tough pill to swallow.
Right.
There's just no easy way to do it. Obviously, you don't want an area to continue running down.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really want to kick people out of their childhood home or place they've been for 10 years. That to me is a situation where you're not going to win. However, I think for the betterment of cities, normally you do have to go in and try to revitalize it because you want the city to continue growing. And if you have a blighted area that continues to stay blighted, that could spill out as it becomes, worse and worse and more run down. You have more crime come into it, have more poverty. You're kind of pushing people away as you're not going to want in the surrounding buildings people coming there. So that's really just a tricky one to me.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it sounds like a lose-lose probably, in all honesty. Well, yeah. I mean, maybe it's like 2 losses and a win. I mean,
kind of. You are making the place better.
Or maybe 3 losses in a row and then 4 wins, or I don't know.
It's just
you're getting out ahead, but yeah, you're definitely.
What you're gonna have to go through is some heartburn, and there's no easy way to do it because once again, at this time, when you're displacing people, you're not really doing it in the most eloquent way, and I don't even know if there's an eloquent way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention, I would imagine those people are probably not upper class in terms of income, so they live there probably because that's their only option.
Exactly. So now it's like kick rocks, and either you can go down to if you can't get a spot in the affordable housing unit, that's run down in the public housing, go there or figure it out. It's not
a ticket and wait for your number to be called.
Unfortunately, that's just kind of what it ended up in. And I think that does raise an interesting question of when is a good time for government to step in and really get involved in building housing. Mm-hmm. To me, there's no one clear, great answer for that.
I agree.
But it's also interesting of does replacing the bad housing ruin kind of neighborhood aspects that were there? If it's kind of run down and not terrible, is it worth going ahead and just tearing it down, or do you wait until it's just an absolute,
a true dump?
A true dump.
Yeah.
I think it's tricky on all those.
I would agree. That's why I don't make those decisions, Dylan.
Yeah, that's just not an
That's up to you. That's up to you.
I don't know. It's some up to me, but it's not completely. I'll tell you that. That's It's not up to me. Yeah, I'll tell you that. Now, with all this going on, you have a guy that really steps up and kind of takes advantage. Robert Moses, major name in New York. He shaped a lot of what was going on and is extremely controversial because he did not have heartburn with displacing people at all. So what he did was come through and he built a lot of bridges, tunnels, parks, really expanded a lot of these things that were probably necessary for as the city wanted to keep growing. But to do that, oftentimes he kind of just bought up your neighborhood and
mow your house down.
Crew's going to be here on Monday.
Pack your stuff and get out.
So not a very great guy. It is interesting how he managed to do this because basically he just got involved in knowing the politicians, the financiers.
That was going to be my guess.
I believe he was friends with Rockefeller and all
that big group,
the big fellers up there.
Sounds about right.
So he came in and just really he developed a lot of the stuff there through means that kind of how you want to view him, but he did it. And I would say it's probably better that he did it because, I mean, you need all those things to get in and out of the city. You need kind of that recreational areas that he developed with like the beaches. That was a big part of it. It is kind of controversial because he did use some of it where you're going through just minority housing and clearing it off to kind of make it's almost like the other side of the tracks, you know. It's very easy for the white side of the neighborhood to get there, but fortunately all the other people can't.
Right.
Very controversial. Can't argue with that at all. I don't think
the course back then.
Yeah, but I think it does fall in line with historical kind of figures.
Right.
Net benefit, I think, was probably, I don't know, I think probably for the most part, I would say what he did was good. Not in terms of displacing people, obviously, but
the manner in which
terms of getting things built, it was important for the city to keep growing. I mean, just a hard part of it that I don't think anyone really wants to make a decision on.
Hey, but I guess he wasn't afraid to.
He was not afraid to. I will tell you that about it. And for that, he got a book about like that thick about him that you can go and read. It's probably well over 1,000 pages.
Is it just straight like hater material, or is it a little bit of education and then it's like?
It's definitely a mix of everything. Because it's just, I mean, you're talking about a guy that didn't care about just displacing. I don't want to say millions, but definitely thousands of hundreds of thousands of people.
Right.
And also got to get into a well-known, established of politicians and, you know, well-off people.
With those folk, then all of a sudden you can do what you want. So
yeah, so falling into that mindset, though, if he really brought down, I mean, he was a true definition of top-down planning. Of I'm looking down and doing what I want. He's the classic example of that's the guy.
He's the guy.
He's the guy to think of. So yeah, he did all of those things, and I think what comes from that is this lady, Jane Jacobs, who's surprising influential New Yorker. She was a journalist, and in the 60s, she started being like, yo, we're living here. This is like a community going on. Do you mind? So she became like a very big opponent to Robert. Which is interesting because she wasn't like a city planner or like a political staff. She was a journalist writing, and she just opposed this. She was like, I'm going to say something about this.
Right.
And she really believed in this organic style of neighborhood of where every community kind of has its purpose, where everything's living together. You have the park, you have the apartment above the mom and pop store, and this idea of kind of her thing was like eyes on the street, where everyone's seeing what's going on. Joe Schmo knows little Sally, and you're all connected, which I think is probably an ideal city for a lot of people. I think it does resonate this very cool idea. To me, it's almost like a Sesame Street vision of like, wow, this is, you know, all roses and sunshine. Unfortunately, I think as you move kind of past her time, I think it's great that she stood up, and I think she did a lot of good for it. However, I think it's just this not completely realistic idea of how New York's going to develop and how it did develop.
Right.
Like, I think it'd be awesome if we could pull out the Harry Potter one and be like, bang, 1,000 rooms in the 2-story, you know, building, but
right above the mom and pop shop.
Unfortunately,
down on the park.
Yeah. Fortunately, it just doesn't work out like that. But she was a major piece in this, as she did kind of come about and bring this idea of, hey, you can't just look down from the top. You need to involve the people that are actually there, and talk with them and understand what does the community mean to them. So very big kudos to her for going out there and getting it done. However, posing a very controversial question to you, but what do you think the risks are if every project could be stopped by local opposition?
So in this case, local opposition would be her
community or whatever is kind of going somewhere.
I would say that probably would end up, obviously this is going to be comparing it to a super large scale, but that would be, allowing or potentially setting up for some type of revolt in the sense of you have a little area that is now kind of rejecting the city or the state or even the government in this case.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know, the government should, in my opinion, obviously dance a pretty fine line. I know it's difficult to dance in terms of, how free should people be versus, I'm going to use the term regulated, how regulated they should be.
Yeah. Finding words to put into those gaps get really hard.
Yeah, because, I would say I'm as patriotic as they get, but there's obviously, as we learned, some things need to be, this is how you do it. If you don't, we're sorry, but, you not doing it like this is causing potential threats and harm to other people around you, which we just can't. You just can't do that.
Yeah.
Especially for, a place to grow, no matter where you are. But that would be my guess, is just people would kind of like herd together. There would be more, I'm going to use the term segregation. There wouldn't be like, all different types of people connecting and learning, about different lifestyles, because that is, again, talking about New York being the melting pot. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, you have places where, I mean, it's just like getting on the subway. Like you could be next to a homeless dude, and you could be next to some guy that's,
gone down to Wall Street.
Yeah, $1 billion hedge fund manager or whatever. So it's kind of like that mix. And if you allow just a small group of people to, put their foot down and be like, nah, actually, I've got this group of people with me, and it's however many are, we're not going to do what you say, that kind of creates a problem. So, especially if they're kind of all, uniform, same exact type of people.
Yeah,
So,
that's really pretty much like NIMBYism, or not in my backyard. It's basically now where it's more like a modern day term, but it's groups that get together and just oppose any development coming to their community,
right.
Basically. And
well, I'm sure that
I understand a lot of it from the fact of you want to protect this investment that you have in real estate typically, and you want your area you love your area, you're passionate about it, and you want to see it grow. However, when you oppose every single thing, you're killing your growth. And without growth, a city is declining.
Correct.
And if you're declining, that's losing tax base. That's losing funding and going towards your projects. So there's a balance, and it is definitely tricky to fall in.
I mean, I would consider it like, I'm sure there's people that when the whole plan to build the BMW plant was launched, that there was people that opposed that. And, their reasoning was probably, I don't know what that was prior to the plant being there. I don't know if that was just barren land or whatever. Some people were probably like, oh, we should, keep it for environmental reasons. Or
if you say just any large project, though, there's always some sort of, there's this, that.
And so I would say, I would feel differently about, obviously the big topic right now is data centers. It's like, I feel differently about, hey, BMW is going to come build a plant, provide thousands of jobs for people in our state, in our city, versus, obviously it's just the hot topic right now, versus a data center that's going to make somebody money that lives halfway across the country, and all it does is infringe on the people that are currently living there and that have been living there for, potentially all their lives.
Yeah.
So, to me, that's the side of the story is if you're going to develop something, it needs to benefit the people who are there, one, and two, benefit the future of that place.
Yeah.
So that's how I would kind of think about it.
Bringing in a net positive is kind of, I think, a good way to think about it.
It's like, we may cut down, 1,000 trees to build this plant, but
we're also producing this many jobs. You're now going to bring this amount of probably improvement or development to the area. Yeah. Where are we coming out positive or negative once we do this?
Right.
Is it worth what we're about to invest in? I think it's the best way to look at it.
Agreed.
It does get hard because people are passionate about the topic, and they should be. It's dealing with your everyday life.
Exactly.
So it's completely understandable. And that kind of flows into this New York now in the 60s, going into the 70s, and the preservation movement taking off. So you have Penn Station, which was the major hub kind of developed, and it was unique architecture, really grand, kind of grandly built, kind of like, I don't know if it was Roman style per se, but this like, very nicely looking building.
Right.
And it got demolished, and a lot of people were like, why are we doing this? Which is a great thing to talk about it. And, like I say, fairly enough, it did become, that's where you get Madison Square Garden.
Right.
Or Taylor Swift's wedding venue, shortly. Whichever way you want to look at it. The Garden, or whatever.
I didn't know that. You actually just educated me on that. I did not know that.
I don't know if it's going to happen.
She's getting married there?
Supposedly.
Is that some type of joke?
Supposedly it's happened Saturday. Supposedly.
Oh, it's happening Saturday.
Supposedly.
July 4th.
That's what the people are saying. That is what the streets are talking right now.
Man, I live under a rock.
She could be misleading people.
I think she is. I think there's some gaslighting going on.
I think there could be gaslighting. But if you don't want to say her wedding venue, you can say the place where she single-handedly brought the Knicks back from a 29-point deficit. Whichever way, clearly a groundbreaking piece of that whole building. Anyways, 1965, New York City gives the Landmarks Preservation Law. This gives, I believe it is an authority, basically, to preserve buildings in the city that are historically significant. And this is really big because once you get that protection, how you can develop the site is affected, what can be done with it in the future is affected. So it's kind of this mix of positive and negatives of you do want to have culture in a city, and if you're just constantly tearing everything down and rebuilding, do you really even have a culture there? I think that can be an arguable question in itself. But if you're looking to sell and improve a building, you're kind of limited, or you're going to have to pay a significant amount more because you're going to have to try to keep certain things intact. I think that's a tricky boundary. I don't know if there's one. If you have any strong feelings about it, if you should just go ahead and tear down those buildings, be like, they're just a building, no one cares,
I mean, I would say I am a believer that, if you don't look at history, it's if you don't look and learn at the past, then it's bound to repeat itself. And maybe that's not the right perspective fully, but it's more so from the standpoint of, let's look at what people did in the past and just have some appreciation for it. Let's not just mow it down and build some junk on top of it just because, like, all the, I think I walked past a good many in Manhattan, like these huge cathedrals that are clearly, probably well over 100 years old.
Yeah.
Stone, like, have these crazy, architecture features and all this stuff. And it's just like, let's not mow that down and build a skyscraper there just so...
We have a skyscraper there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about it. It's just like, let's at least have a little bit of appreciation for what was before us, because if that didn't exist, then we wouldn't be here. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah.
So, and it's, I don't know, again, maybe getting on a soapbox here, but people just did things with a bit more care in the past, and now it's just like...
Well, I think you had a little bit more, like, passionate architecture. I think you can significantly tell which buildings have been around for a long time and which haven't.
100%.
And I think that is really good. I think where New York falls into a little bit of a problem is, I don't want to misquote them, but I believe there's like 1,000-something buildings placed under this preservation.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not a dignified cap on how many can get placed under there. And to me, it would make almost sense of what's our top, maybe just it is our top 1,000. And I can't tell you how many buildings are in New York, so I don't know. But, I mean, like, It's clearly a significant amount. And is it truly serving a public service still, being on that register?
Right. Which I would probably agree with that.
Because
I'm sure there's some like brownstones up there that are hundreds of years old, and it's just like,
this is really unique and this is cool, but
we've kept this and everything, but now some like millionaire, billionaire lives there, and it's been gutted from the inside out. And so
I think also it'd be more interesting to be able to say you can revitalize this building, but you have to keep some sort of cultural significance in it.
Right.
Historical aspect to it. I think that would make it interesting. All right, now I have free will to redesign it, but I do have to go through a design review process of this has to fit somehow contextual back to what it was like originally for.
I would agree with that.
I think that would be a unique way to do it. But it does just pose this idea of more regulations. Now, what's very important in New York is transferment of development rights. So all the air rights.
I was going to ask about this.
Yeah.
The air real estate.
The air real estate. So the TDRs, this is going to be your air rights. You are able to sell those. So that adds another kind of twist.
Does that include like sidewalks like in front of you?
No, because those are now public. Like that's typically,
I guess that was a goofy question. I felt
like because some of it is privately owned. Which I have talking about next, of like plazas and kind of like building frontage. Because that's what you see more as you get into modern, of where you're having maybe this grand building, but you have this nice like area that you can come into.
Right.
But sidewalks now are pretty much all like the actual sidewalk is like public. But the TDRs, they do allow these buildings that are preserved to sell those air rights. So since you're capped, can't do anything with it really. You can sell however many. I don't know if it's. I should have done, but I don't know if it's a defined number of like you have 10 units above your, or if it goes up to what's the tallest building, and that's how high you could theoretically build at this time, and you can sell up to that point. If you have a 20-story building and the highest one's 100 stories, you have 80. Couldn't tell you, but there is some formula that makes it work.
Set in stone.
Yeah. But that adds some value, obviously, because clearly now you can just sell those off and make some money back. However, to me, that doesn't really clearly make up for development necessarily.
Right.
I'd rather just see kind of things go up than just selling the air rights. But that's how you're able to get the tallest buildings. You have to buy up these air rights. That's like Billionaires Row. Bought up, those buildings, buy up a ton of those rights. You build them up, and to me, they're kind of a waste of space, but they look really cool. They make a very cool YouTube video if you want to go look them up.
Some have significant issues.
Yeah, some have very big problems. Some are just bought, never lived in, because they're great real estate holdings. Several problems in itself of that section, but regardless,
not our problem.
Can't really deal with that. So now with kind of all of this, what do you think is kind of the balance of protecting the memory while trying to grow? If you were to get to be able to be kind of authoritative about it.
See, that's tough. That's tough. I mean, that's a good question, and I would say you can probably. I'm not trying to kick it.
Oh, there's no easy answer to this.
But I would feel like you'd have probably a bit better answer just because like you have more knowledge on the subject. Because to me, it would be difficult because I would probably end up being like, this was important for this reason, and we'll keep it. Unfortunately, it's in a great spot, but we just can't do anything with it. So it's like that back and forth of like, hey, what do we do? I don't know what we do. So do we just leave it? I guess we'll just leave it. So
I feel like kind of what it can falls to naturally, of like you're kicking the can kind of down the road of
100%. Somebody will probably, in my opinion, will probably mow it down eventually. But
someone will eventually figure out things to do with all these buildings.
Which that would be nice.
Never be chained. I think some of them are probably very significant in their architecture, but architecture really gets weird to me because you'll have some. It's like, this was designed by so and so, and it's his last standing building, so it's significant,
right?
And it's like, I understand your point that like this is kind of an artwork, but at the same time, it's not. You know, it's a building.
Yeah. If it doesn't serve that great a purpose, it's like
reinvent.
It's just there for architecture fans.
Yeah. So,
I guess.
Yeah. Pretty much. You just get a bunch of clout for being like, oh, this was the architect. Okay. Doesn't really do
I'll check my Rolodex on that one.
I'm sure the architectural people are like,
sure I have his number.
Hey,
this is really cool. We should keep it. Well, I mean, I guess that goes back to, you know, if you have one group of people that's just kind of against everything or whatever, whether they're living in that area or whatnot,
mm-hmm.
That's just kind of how it worked. Like if you had, for whatever reason, all the architects lived in the same exact spot,
yeah,
and then like the building next to them was whoever the greatest architect is ever, I don't know, Frank Lloyd Wright or whatever, and he built this building, and they're like, oh, well, you can't tear that down, even though the building literally can't do anything, like it serves zero purpose.
Yeah. Frank Lloyd Wright's quite a pull. I didn't see that. That's quite
a trade ball right there.
That's a good pull. Yeah, I really agree with you. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's again, where you just have heartburn about it and you make a decision.
I was about to say, again, I thankfully don't have to make those decisions, so all power to, I guess, whoever does.
Yeah. Now kind of jumping into the part we were talking about of what is the kind of ground level space. This is an interesting guy, William White. He had this kind of genius idea to go and let's observe of what are people actually doing in public spaces and what makes them kind of intriguing to draw people
slightly
in.
Odd, but not
it's slightly odd. I mean, but it is innovative that like no one thought about this when designing all these you know,
places,
everything
parks,
going on,
etc.
Yeah. So he actually went out and just sat there, I guess, with his notebook, and it's like, who's walking by? Why are they stopping? What are they looking at? And this is important because in 61, you're now having zoning rules that are shaped to add bonus zoning if they include things like the public spaces, so like having a plaza or whatever kind of engaging area. And some of that is also now where he's observing like, these are not good. We need to kind of change this.
Right.
Because if you're going to be giving out bonuses for either extra flooring or whatever it's tied to, then it's probably useful. Just, you know, common sense there. Everything kind of comes back in circle when we think about it.
What is the saying? Time is a flat circle or whatever.
And so he does that, and he's really kind of influential in making a lot of the plazas and later on parks, and setting those up so that they're drawing people in and actually being used, and are kind of talked about in actual places where you want to go sit or you want to go stroll or whatever it is. So he did a lot in that aspect, probably more than I touched on, but to me, that's the big part about what he did. Now, the 70s.
Am I getting a pretty big jump? We're moving through here.
We're moving through. I want to get to the 70s because I think it's the most interesting time in New York. Because basically, before this, everything has been pretty much going uphill. You know, we've been going to the top corner. That's what we've been heading for. 70s come around, and now you're running into a fiscal crisis because what have you been doing up until now? Investing in infrastructure, investing in all of these things. Things are coming due. You're now having to pay things.
Bills.
Bills are happening.
Bills.
So you have expenses that are stacking up from everything you've done. At the same time, you start getting a declining population. You having loss of jobs for manufacturing now starting to move out. And so you're losing a lot of the middle class, a lot of the lower class moving out. That's not good. When you have rising bills and a losing tax base, that's not exactly a recipe for success here.
No, that's a recipe for pain.
That is. What do we get with that? We have drugs come into the city, corruption, you have the mob. This is where you get those interesting New York movies and all the mob, shows come out, and it's like, it's all kind of happening. You're having you're starting to get back into that mess. And I think the best example of this is Times Square. You're having it get into this really adult-focused district, pretty much, of really centered around adult things. Put that nicely, as best as we can.
Adult things. Are you about to tell me that there's a strip club where the Macy's is now? No, don't do that.
There was a little bit more than just club.
Here we go.
There was quite some things. I mean, you had peep shows, you had prostitution, you had clubs, you had old movie theaters. It basically was just
that was the 1970s. Look back to 2006. That's now the Toys R Us. Just kidding.
That's like
that's probably actually true. But I didn't know
probably
that.
Not too far off.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
Yeah,
because I can tell you that when I went to Times Square, I was not a huge fan of it. Well, obviously, there's no peep shows nowadays and stuff like that. I was just kind of like, what is the purpose of this place? Just the big billboards, I guess. I don't know.
Well, that's what a lot of the peep shows used originally. Is the billboards were kind of used as like draw into.
This was like mini Vegas.
Kind of, I guess, is a way to think about it. Just more focused on like, I don't know if it's gambling as much as like, it's kind of.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about other just illegal.
The other side of Vegas.
Explicit things, yeah.
So yeah, it's Times Square. That's where it's at. And you roll later into about the 80s and 90s, and what happens is now you develop this business improvement district. So when you're in Times Square and you see the Times Square Alliance, those guys, I think they have like red jackets on. You're kind of like, why are they here? What that is the businesses all around and kind of the government came together and they said, we want to improve this area to make it a central part of the city. And so they added this kind of increment tax for those businesses that goes to funding this alliance. What that alliance did was help keep the streets clean. It helped clean up everything. The city wrote zoning kind of requirements to change it, that it's not, these aren't allowed uses anymore on what's here. We're going to incentivize changing it. So you have really what would kind of be a public partner or partnership going on of we want to get this better, and I think this is a key part. And I think it really is big for New York, as now Times Square is something you automatically think about.
100%.
I think if you're on a tour, like go on, well, I'm sure people are going there for different reasons, but now it's more of like a tourist attraction. Everyone can go there. It's a family place, so it was very big for the city, in my opinion, of making that happen, because you developed kind of this heart of the city almost, of that it's part of what New York's known for.
That's true.
But, I mean, that's just one of the places that was significantly developed. You have that kind of going on throughout the city elsewhere of revitalizing these places to make them better, kind of in this falling out of that declining rough patch.
That dirty money stuff.
Yeah, get rid of the dirty money. Probably don't want that. But yeah, so that all comes together of getting everyone on the same page and moving together. Once again, looking at these problems from a big perspective. That's how we're going to solve them. It's what actually got them through. I don't feel like that question is very relevant. So I'm just going to keep moving.
I'll take your word for it, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we've already hashed it out a couple times, so I'm not going to go back to it. Now we're getting more into this modern New York of where it's tourism focused, and you have your finance, and you have all of your kind of white collar jobs. And I want to harp on again, what's really big now is you're having agglomeration effects of everyone in finance. You have insurance companies coming in. You have healthcare. Every kind of thing is getting better because it's all focused there. You're having cross trade kind of talks. You're having so ideas are jumping because you're having professionals from different sectors talking to each other. Businesses are growing because you're having competition to raise them all up, and you're getting money flowing back into the city. which helped it kind of come back out of it, and also you got rid of kind of all the sketchiness that was going on. So it's all pieced together, and now you fall into this modern New York, which is took some time to get to where it's at, and it clearly still has its issues. You have homelessness is clearly a problem. Housing is obviously a problem, as those two normally go together. And then now you're having congestion, and also more now you're falling also into like kind of climate risks. Noticeably, like Hurricane Sandy, you get pretty roughed up. I think that's where you fall more into wanting to be resilient to natural disasters and ready for them. And you get kind of resiliency planning coming in. You get reinforcement of the subway, which is probably good. Don't want to be underwater in the subway.
No, thank you.
Hard pass. That's all I could think about anytime I went under a bridge. I was like, man.
That's how I was going from Brooklyn to Manhattan.
And the
I was like, I'm underwater right now. If anything were to happen, I have no chance. I have no chance.
I'm so cooked.
For some reason, I feel like if I was actually in Manhattan and I was like, on whatever train it is that just goes straight uptown, and if something were to happen, I'd be like, okay, I have some type of chance. When I'm underwater, I'm like, yeah.
I got shot under the tunnel. Yeah, not really looking too positive.
In reality, you're just cooked in both. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, probably not great odds in either situation. But it is important, and now they're continuing to kind of invest in those things. You're also now having growth in other parts. I believe it's Hudson Yards is going to be another big sector of it. And it's going to be interesting to see how the city really continues to grow with it. And the last biggest thing to hit on here, congestion pricing. Very controversial implementation.
I was about to say, I believe we discussed that offline prior.
Yeah.
Those dang Ubers.
Yeah. But for anyone that doesn't know, congestion pricing is where you're paying basically a toll to use the most, I guess,
congested areas.
Congestion,
roads, things like that.
Most desirable roads during
Which is
kind of
crazy.
Peak times. And what this money does is it goes towards basically funding improvements and keeping everything running.
Their budget deficit.
And also to lower, that probably as well, lower congestion in those areas, as even if you have a few people take less cars, it's probably going to help out more.
I was about to say, and I don't know like the specifics on that. I remember hearing about it. Like, is that just purely a car thing? It's like, oh, if you drive your car through here, you gotta pay this, that, and the other.
I believe it's
or is that like
purely a car thing?
Car, bus, like there's no way.
Well, buses don't have a. That's like.
Well, buses are part of that. That's part of the city, so yeah.
Sense. Cars have it, and I believe trucks also have a similar system.
So
like delivery trucks when they're coming in, they're kind of being incentivized to deliver at different times compared to like rush hour traffic. So like obviously you don't want the.
But I thought this was the city that never sleeps. I'm just kidding.
Well, that's why they never sleep, because that box truck should be getting delivered at 2 a.m. and not at
that's true.
8 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
So that's kind of how it. Well, that's pretty much how it's exactly. Those times might vary by somewhat, but it's basically incentivizing people to use the road at different times. It is
fair.
I mean, yes, it is unfair slightly in the fact of you are having to pay to use this road. However, it kind of falls into the economic theory of if you want to use it bad enough, you're going to pay for it, and if you don't want to, you're going to find different means to get to where you're going.
Yeah.
I don't completely disagree when you have that many people trying to move in and out of an area. Using a subway or using a bus, it's kind of better to incentivize them to use that. And I think they have done pretty well with it. I have not looked at the specific numbers, but I believe it's gone fairly well.
More research from Mike.
Yeah. Need Jamie to research it.
Jamie, pull it up.
Pull it up, Jamie. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What you kind of think? Get rid of it? Don't do it? What was the? I think it's a tough. It's one of those.
I would just say it would be hard to, in my opinion. I feel like it's just like any other time you have a problem with traffic. If you block off one way, another way is going to get crowded. So it's like or every single area, one of these congestion zones or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, is that literally,
That is one of the strong arguments to it. Is everyone just going to take like a side street and
right.
go that way? And I really couldn't tell you honestly if that's how it's gone.
My other question is, what type of, I guess, negatives does that place on whatever people are traveling through that area? More from a standpoint of, I don't know how much it costs.
Mm-hmm.
What about, Ubers and taxis? Do you want them to do the same? Because then if like Ubers and taxis are doing it, then it just goes back to you're taking the congestion from one area and you're just moving it to another area. So to me, it would be they're probably, and I would assume and hope that they've done it, but like there would need to be some serious analysis on what the actual benefit is of this. But to me, that there's no way that it makes that much sense. But that's obviously thinking about it just in my head right now.
Well, so I would have to think you're making a pretty good amount of money.
That would be the hope. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Considering how many people drive, and also when you still are taking an Uber, I believe they added on a fee.
Okay,
like
so that would make sense.
So like the fee's passed on to the user still. So it's not passed on to like the Uber driver.
Right. Does that make sense?
So I think that makes sense clearly of like it.
But then it's like, does the customer have the option of avoiding that area? I would assume they do, yes.
Well, I don't know if you need a pickup in like.
Well, if you're getting picked up in your.
I think you probably have an option to be like,
hey, avoid this.
I would imagine you do.
I would hope so.
I know when we were there, we didn't really have an option because we were in Times Square, and so like the only way out of Times Square was whatever. I don't know. I think it's hard to imagine from living here that working because it's so ingrained in being in a car. Like
100%.
Being in a lot of the southern cities, you need a car to access anything. So the idea that you're going to have to pay a toll to use a car is just not
bonkers.
It's a bonkers idea. However, when you're in a city that has so many different modes of transportation,
it's probably a bit different. Yeah,
I think it's a bit different. So I don't know. I mean, right now it seems like it's here to stay. So I would assume it's working well enough.
I hope it is. I think they've got big bills to pay.
Yeah, I think they always are going to have big bills to pay. The other thing we're going to see is the rent freeze they put into place. I don't know how that's going to go for them.
I'll be eager to see how that works out as well.
I will be interested to see. I don't know. It's only for a limited amount of apartments.
Mm-hmm.
So the only issue I see with it, and I'd be curious on what the real counter argument to it is. If you're freezing how much their rent can increase, that doesn't stop the landowners or whoever's owning the unit of insurance, maintenance, whatever other tax costs going up.
So that's so
are those being, there's like the property owner's taxes being frozen like at the same price? Because to me, that's cutting into what otherwise they could be making.
Mm-hmm. I would probably say that they're not being frozen. If I would doubt it.
I mean, I'm taking a shot in the dark. I'm not really like a landlord advocate here, but
I'm not either.
It just doesn't make a ton of sense.
But it's definitely odd because it's like, I'm sure that there's, again, kind of like two sides of the story where there's some situations where it's like, this landlord keeps increasing your rent because his rent or his cost of owning it continues to rise, and then there's other cases where it's probably like the cost of owning it probably does not correlate directly with the price increases in terms of rent.
Mm-hmm.
Probably it's more like just purely demand driven or whatever.
Yeah.
But then the big thing is, I guess, how does that work in terms of if whoever lives there wants improvements and things of that nature, like, are they able to afford that? Are the landlords able to afford that? You would imagine so, but I don't know. I don't want to get down like a political path, but I would assume New York being New York, like I would imagine the margins on being a landlord are probably not as substantial as you think, but that would just be my guess.
Well, right now I'm just kind of, it's mostly speculation. I just don't know. I think it'd be also interesting to look at how many apartments are sitting like empty up there.
Agreed.
Because you can't afford to like upfit them to meet a certain code or whatever. And how can you get around that? I think that's where you have to have a conversation with politicians, planners, lawmakers, developers, all in a room and say, why can't we make this work? And those are very hard conversations to have.
I would say my knee-jerk reaction is it's like, no way they don't make enough money to outfit them or do the necessary maintenance. But like that, again, that's just would be like instant reaction just thinking about it. So
I think it could be very pricey.
I bet it definitely is. But
it also seems like you're making a lot on very small spare square footage up there.
Correct. Yeah.
I don't know. To me, to make a solid decision on that, it would take really having definite numbers.
100%
to really lean one way majorly. But it'll be interesting, hopefully someone figures out a problem to the housing crisis and everyone can kind of copy and paste. That would be ideal.
Yeah.
I think now that we've gone through everything, a major arcing question in the modern day, I think just not for New York, but for overall major cities, do you think they're still going to have a place in 5, 10, 20 plus years of now that you're having a rise of remote work, and also it seems like a rise of enjoyment of suburb rural living?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know, because that is one thing that I have thought about just from the standpoint of, COVID existed and everybody started working from home. Like when you look at New York and you look at the skyline, like majority of those buildings are office spaces, especially obviously down towards Wall Street and things of that nature. So it's like when those are empty, what is happening? Because I would say that probably 97% are not just owned outright. Some bank has the mortgage on it somewhere. So, or it's wrapped up in some type of
financial tool,
CMBS bond out there. And so it's like, what happens when those aren't filled? I don't know. I would imagine that it would cause some pain, but I feel like if the pain was there, then it would already be known. I don't know.
Seems like it hasn't been.
So me personally, I actually think it's going to start going back a little bit the other way eventually, is that people are going to work from home for a couple of years, and they're going to be like, well, this kind of sucks, because there is humans like to interact with other humans, so, and me personally, I have a hard time just like talking to somebody on a Zoom call. My attention is diverted a billion times.
Yeah.
Like, just like when, we were in school during COVID, getting on a Zoom call for class, that sucked in my opinion. Like, I would rather sit in class 10 times out of 10. Like, I just felt like I was there for a reason, for a purpose, in comparison to if I'm sitting at home and I'm working. Me personally, I have a hard time just staying focused on work. I'm like, I can go do laundry, I can go do whatever. And that's obviously what people like to do. It's like, I'm loading up a program or whatever, or I'm trying to run a model or whatever it may be.
I'm gonna go.
I can step away, start some laundry, maybe clean the dishes. I get that. That's very attractive, because then, there's no getting home. You have to do it all. So I understand it. So I don't know. I mean, I thought that the problem would already be there if it did exist.
Yeah.
From a standpoint of commercial real estate.
So far, it hasn't looked to collapse.
I don't know. Yeah.
And it's been 6 years, it seems like, of falling on hold. Next year, it's...
And maybe they've just kind of pushed, they kind of...
There's always tools to kick the can down the road, I suppose. But,
yeah, exactly. And there are. And, I mean...
But you haven't seen any major, defaults on,
No, credit has, credit even at the big banks has stayed relatively stable. I mean, they see a peak they see a little spike every once in a while, but, then the next 3 quarters it'll dip back down. So it's kind of odd. It doesn't look like it's building. And maybe that's just because of, the duration on the loans. I don't know. I have no idea. So,
it's packaged into a CDO. And
yeah. It could be, and it could be sitting on somebody's balance sheet and it'd be junked. Very likely, but
I don't know.
hopefully that doesn't happen
I don't have the
again.
numbers in front of me.
Hopefully that doesn't happen again. So that's neither here nor there. But
I do think it would be interesting. I think people could go back to the larger cities. I think it's appealing to younger people.
100%.
Specifically.
I would not live in New York City if I was a grown adult and had kids. No way in the world.
But I think the idea of I can get out and walk around and my possibilities are pretty much endless.
To me, that's insanely attractive.
It seems very cool.
If I could walk out of my apartment and
go do whatever I wanted to.
Walk to the bar, walk to the store, walk to the grocery store, do whatever.
Yeah.
That's
pretty nice.
I don't have to get my car, I can enjoy my little stroll.
Yep.
Unless the weather's bad.
Then it's negative. Then you really want that work from home.
So, the pros and cons to everything for sure.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't. I think that people will eventually.
I think there's too many pros to the major city for them to ever disappear.
100%, yeah.
I think there's too much of, agglomeration and effects of I think the big businesses do recognize when you're bringing in the top talent and you're having it all work together, that
Definitely.
You're getting benefits from that aren't necessarily visible.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they'd ever reinvest somewhere else or whatever.
Right. And I think to me, I think if it'll be more of a big city to big city move if things get kind of rough.
Yeah.
So you could maybe, I don't know, there's laws that differ state to state, and when businesses find it advantageous to move somewhere else,
they typically move there.
They typically do that. So I'll be eager to see if more businesses start moving down to Miami, things like that,
Texas,
because there's been a lot of speculation on
I think Colorado
Miami.
has their own. I think there's about 3. I think they'll disperse more than just go to Miami. Truthfully.
Oh, I would agree, but I just know that's where a couple of financial
see.
firms have jumped they've jumped to Miami.
Well, finance makes sense because I feel like half their time spent down there.
That's true. That's true. They fly back and forth.
Yeah, pretty much. It'll be interesting to see how everything kind of shakes and rattles and
rolls
with it. But you got any other questions want to ask? Or
no, that was pretty insightful.
Talk about.
I could probably go on and on about that for a pretty good amount of time and learning different things.
Yeah, I don't know how long we talked about it, but there's definitely probably a lot more that could have covered that we did not.
As I'll say, we definitely covered a plethora of topics.
I think we covered quite a bit.
A huge timeline, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I think it's important. You gotta why did it become what it is?
That's the why is important.
Yeah. All right then. Appreciate you for doing it.
Enjoyed it.
I think it was pretty good.
Professor Dillon, Professor City Planner.
Professor Planner.